The acts of Joan of Arc have left thousands of soldiers and civilians dead and hundreds of acres of rich farmland ruined. The rural economy of France is in shambles. We now go live to a reporter who will elaborate on the situation.
Joan was a French peasant girl born in 1412 in the village of Dormigny in Champagne, whose vision and military leadership won victory and gained money to France. I'm here with King Charles to tell us about the journey with Joan.
In 1948, I first met Joan at court when she came disguised as a male for safety. She told me about her visions, and I examined her to make sure she was the virgin she said she was.
And what happened after?
She then traveled with our army to New Orleans dressed as a knight with armor and sword and dedicated a letter to the English.
What did the letter say?
She was ordering them to surrender and was offering peace to England if they would repay what they have taken from France.
Well, was the letter successful?
Indeed it was. It inspired our attack and we forced the English to retreat Orleans. After that, Joan was named co-commander of the entire army and led us to military victories.
Well, there you have it. Now back to the studio.
The 100 Years' War had both distant and immediate causes. Now on to our reporter with more on the subject.
Yes, hello. The English began in 1337 with a series of random sieges and cavalry raids, fought and starts, with treaties along the way to stop hostility. And we are here with a prestigious historian who can tell us more about this.
Well, during the early war stages, England was highly successful. For instance, in 1346, the English were victorious over the French with the help of longbows.
How specifically did the longbows help the English victory?
The longbows caused a blinding shower of arrows that unhorsed the French knights, causing confusion. Then the English horsemen charged, later demolishing the French.
At the time, was this considered war?
According to the chivalric rules that Edward III preferred, it was not. Nevertheless, Edward the Black Prince used the same methods to smash the French at Poitiers, where he captured the French king and held him for ransom.
When did this war begin again?
In 1415, when the able English soldier King Henry V invaded. Henry's army defeated a much larger French force again, primarily through the skills of English longbowmen.
So did his triumph last?
Yes, he was able to reconquest Normandy, and by 1419 the English had reached the Wall of Paris.
Then what happened to the French throne?
Henry married the daughter of the French king, and a treaty made Henry and any sons of the couple have rights to the French throne. With this, you would think he would come to rule both England and France, but unexpectedly in 1422, he left a son to her.
After his death, what happened to the English military?
They continued their military victories, however, and besieged the city of Orleans, the only major city in northern France not under their control. But the French cause was not lost.
Well, there you have it. Thank you, Miss Historian. Now back to the studio.
Yes, some of the causes include disagreement over rights to land and an agreement over the succession to the French throne. We are here to talk with our witness who knows about the passing around of the throne and also this agreement over territory.
Well, in 1259, Henry III of England had signed the Treaty of Paris with Louis of France.
And what did he do?
The treaty would confirm English claims to the Queen in return to become vassal of the French crown. Then by the 14th century, French policy was strongly expansionist, and the French kings later.
What did he do?
The treaty would confirm English claims to the Queen in return to become vassal of the French crown. Then by the 14th century, French policy was strongly expansionist, and the French kings later resolved to obtaining the duchy into the Kingdom of France. Aquitaine, which was part of the holding of the English crowns, therefore became a disputed territory.
After this, what was the political cause of the war?
The cause was the dispute over who would inherit the French throne after Charles of France died childless in 1328. His death ended the Capetian dynasty of France. Charles had a sister, Isabella, who had a son, Edward III, King of England. High nobles, meaning to exclude Isabella and Edward from the French throne, proclaimed that no woman nor her son could succeed the French monarch.
Did French lawyers defend this position?
Yes, they defended it with the claim that the exclusion of women for ruling or passing crown the right to the rule was part of Salitic law of the 6th century law code of Franks, and this law itself was part of the fundamental law of France.
How did these French lawyers use the Salic law?
Well, they used it to argue that Edward, son of Isabella, should not be allowed to inherit the French throne. At the end of the argument, the nobles passed the crown to Philip VI of Wallace and a nephew of Charles instead of Edward.
Well, there you have it. Now back to the studio.
Hi, we are here today with one of the soldiers from this battle, Sergeant Cliff.
Wow, hello. The war has left its mark on both sides. France was where most of the bloodshed took place. This destroyed their economy and angered all of its citizens.
Was France the only side to take such casualties?
No, the war wreaked havoc in England as well, even though only the southern coastal parts saw the war. England spent over £5 million on the war effort. Despite the money raised by some victories, the overall result of the war was an enormous financial loss.
Who were the soldiers fighting in the war?
In both France and England, men of all classes volunteered to join the war effort in hope of riches. Some were successful, but as the time went on, however, most fortunes seem to have been squandered as fast as they were made. In addition, the social order was disrupted, since the knights who ordinarily served as sheriffs, coroners, jurymen, and justices of peace were abroad.
Was there any other effects of the war?
While the war inspired people to experiment primarily with artillery, the cannon revolutionized warfare, making stone castles seem as if it were made of sand.
Whoa, fantastic! Well, thank you for your time. Now back to the studio. Hello. Well, we are here live with Cambridge professor Mr. Wheatley.
Hello. While the war had a profound impact on the political and cultural lives of both cultures.
How so?
Well, mostly it stimulated the development of the English Parliament. Representative assemblies flourished in many European countries. In these English parliaments, German deities and Spanish courts, they would develop practices that laid the foundations for the representative institutions of modern democratic nations.
And how long did these last?
Well, they started to decline in many countries after the 13th century. However, the English Parliament survived.
Why did English Parliament stay?
Well, it was mostly because Edward III's constant need for money to pay the war, he needed the parliaments to keep things organized.
How often did the Parliament meet during this region?
They met 37 of the 50 years Edward III was king.
Is that number significant?
Yes, it is. Representative assemblies were becoming a habit. Knights and wealthy urban residents, or commons, if you will, recognized their mutual interests and began to meet apart from the lords. The commons gradually realized that they had most of the country's economic power and a parliamentary approval of all non-feudal levies.
What did that mean?
Basically, the King of England could not tax without Parliament's consent.
How did that affect things during the war?
While during the course of the war, money grants increasingly tried to readiness the grievances of the subjects. The government had to correct the wrongs its public protested. Increasingly tried to readiness the grievances of the subjects. The government had to correct the wrongs its public protested.